I think that brands need to earn the right to be a part of people's lives, to be a part of mom's life in this conversation.
When we think about it, we really think about how to focus in on leading with the science, but simplifying it through storytelling.
If healthcare organizations are still only talking about AI for the sake of efficiency, then they're having the wrong conversation.
In this episode of Wellness, Work, and Wellbeing, we are joined by Erica Spoor, SVP of Business Strategy at Sparks, to talk about how healthcare brands can really use experiential marketing to turn complex science into something people can actually understand and engage with. And she gives us some real examples. We discuss why in-person experiences are becoming more valuable in an increasingly digital healthcare world, and how brands can simplify without sacrificing the science, and why the best experiences don't end when the event does. Hey, Erica, welcome to the show.
Hey, Becky, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So can you give me a high-level overview of what you do at Sparks?
Yeah, absolutely. So my role is heading up business strategy at Sparks. I really focus on how we align our growth as a company and how we plan for that in our enterprise planning with where the market and our clients are heading. Trying to keep an eye on that, year and 3 to 5 year trajectory.
I will absolutely get into that. But first I want to talk about, I looked at your website. It's incredible. There's a lot of great activations, beautiful imagery where I'm like, oh, I want to go to that event. But I keep coming back to storytelling, and storytelling is going to be really important for a healthcare perspective because the science and the information can get really dry and complicated. So how do the best brands communicate complex science in a way that's both engaging and accurate?
That's a great question, and it's really at the heart of what Sparks does. So, as an experiential brand agency, we work on exactly that challenge with our healthcare clients, and we have been focusing on healthcare for over 40 years. So we've really seen the trends change, and we've worked through with our healthcare clients how to evolve their presence in order to continue to connect with their audiences and get the brand visibility they need and the information. And like you said, this is complex, like communicating healthcare products, solutions, therapies, drugs, is not a simple thing. There's a lot of also regulatory compliance that our clients have to navigate. So it's not always as simple as saying what you want to say. So for us, when we think about it, we really think about how to focus in on leading with the science, but simplifying it through storytelling. And we have worked with a few clients for a very long time, have been involving their stories. So Viatris is one of them. They're a pharmaceutical company, and we recently worked with them on a launch of a new COPD drug that they were doing, which is, as we know, a difficult condition for folks who have it. And it's pretty groundbreaking because it was going to reduce the dosing window for these clients, and the patient outcomes are really positive. And it was the key to understanding it was that the dosing window had gone from down to 8 minutes. So we built the entire experience for the doctors and the healthcare providers that would be coming to their exhibit to help them tie into that dosing duration. And so the clock motif ran through the entire space. Every zone tied back to kind of that single fact, and each area was built to let the providers go into deeper detail into the efficacy story at their own pace. So we found that works really well, where you start with one simple concept like the clock, the 8 minutes, and then you break it down into, detail and letting the audience themselves explore on their own and have that engagement with a knowledgeable expert in the space. So that's one of the ways we've been breaking the storytelling down to make the complexity of the science simpler.
You're really bringing it back to some basic marketing 101 and knowing your audience and bringing it to where they can understand this is a quality of life issue. And when we want to change something, or if you want to get to somebody and get them to change brand or connect with the brand, how can they improve the quality of life? And that dosing window is a huge quality of life change. I love that. And what is driving this evolution? How is it changing the way that brands connect? First, it was always like doctors were the center, and the center of where we get our information and our trust. But brands are learning that they can also put themselves at the center. So what's driving the way that they can connect with their audiences?
There's a lot at play here. I think we are all, as consumers, experiencing kind of the direct to consumer healthcare movement. which is interesting, right? A lot of us can go out and access prescription medicine through a web portal. We don't even need a doctor's intervention now. I think that's really hard and concerning for providers and doctors. While it provides a channel, for commercialization for drug companies and device companies and the like, doesn't necessarily doesn't build the trust necessarily that is necessary to really feel confident in the drug that you're buying. So where I think events play a really unique role in this whole trend is they are the authentic in-life experience that we know consumers trust the most. And we know this not just in the healthcare industry, but across events that, any event attendees trust brands far more after they've been to an in-person experience. In fact, 95% of event attendees say they trust the brand more after in person. So that really provides a great opportunity on all fronts of this conversation. So for, folks who want to, like the brands that want to leverage direct to consumer, it does give them the pause to come back and say, actually build trust in person. So if you are Takeda, a rare disease pharmaceutical brand, you in person is the way that you can build the trust with your audience the best. And then for healthcare providers, I think they're getting this same onslaught and deluge of online and digital fatigue. So similarly, it's important for them to have the opportunity to be in person, to learn hands-on, to really understand the drugs and the therapies and the devices and have the conversation with a knowledgeable expert. So in this era of digital and this era of mistrust, events have become the place that consumers and patients and providers can build trust.
I love that. I've always said that training is the best marketing, because if you train your people, they will speak to what they know and they will evangelize for you because they will understand it. So if you have your doctors, you're giving them that personal connection and training, they'll do a lot of the work for you because they can trust it and they'll be able to speak to it. That's a really great approach. And then you've got these really essentially then multiple channels to hit. You've got different activation channels to hit. I love that. Let's get into live events and how they can create a very different environment than like a website or an ad campaign. You are the masters of experiential. What can experiential marketing accomplish for healthcare brands that other channels simply can't?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, we know everyone is experiencing digital fatigue, and healthcare providers and professionals are no different. People, these folks are showing up completely saturated also when they do join events. So doctors in particular are feeling overwhelmed. They're getting the onslaught of, advertisements and promotions from drug and device companies. So it is kind of getting harder and harder to reach them. So for healthcare brands, experiential really becomes a valuable platform. It provides, where we're seeing that go is it shifts from information overload and maybe digital content that you either scroll by or don't trust to really conversation-driven spaces. Our approach is to really think about it almost like architectural pacing. So when we build an exhibit for a client, really thinking through, or a retail space or a standalone activation, how do we create that flow? You can get some information and continue to go deeper as you'd like to. And that really is what helps combat that digital fatigue, keeping things hands-on, conversational, keeping people away from screens when we're bringing them to an in-person event, and trying to come up with different ways of engaging. So in the case of GoodRx, everyone might know GoodRx is one of, a free platform that provides prescription drug price tracking, discount coupons, telehealth services. We worked with them on their exhibit at one of the largest healthcare industry trade shows. And what we really did was stayed away from a lot of on-screens. We created a very open canopy space, and we really allowed for them to build brand awareness and connect with providers in discrete meeting nooks that they could kind of have a side conversation in, instead of just putting a bank of monitors with information in front of them. So really making sure that a rep from GoodRx could connect with a provider, sit down and talk and answer the questions that they need. So we're finding in our research and in our actual observations and experiences that folks are leaning away from anything that they can consume online when you're in person. So we're doing the same, and we're really trying to bring things to life in very creative ways. We're also working with brands to bring a lot of their technology in. So when it comes to Alcon, they provide vision products. We, have done some incredibly interactive displays where their equipment is right there. The doctor can, test it, try it, understand the diagnostic tools better, have them interacting with patients that are experiencing the vision products directly. So it becomes much more of a of an interactive learning experience and less of a passive experience in person.
Because then you take that with you when you go. And so that segues perfectly into my follow-up question with this is then what are the next steps? So you do an activation, we've got an event. What are the follow-ups after this event to keep that goodwill going? So like I go to the pharmacy and you use GoodRx as an example. They've been around for a long time already. They're mostly known or previously known for having some of the best data, frankly, that anybody's had. And so much information and being able to track all of that. And the fact that they're pivoting and getting more experiential marketing out there to where I'm at, I don't know, Walgreens the other day, and I see these little GoodRx cards right there on the counter. So nobody has to stress out. They're right there. It's an easy lift. What do you do? What's in between those 2 points, the experiential to getting that little card at Walgreens?
Yeah, I think for us, the connection with our brands in the case of GoodRx is helping they're trying to help doctors and providers connect their own brands to the patients and the outcomes. So for us, it's helping to partner with them on pre, during, and post. We think a lot about that when we think about, experiential. So when we engage, it's not just what are we doing for you at the event. It's like, what are you doing ahead of time? What is the experience like during the event? And then afterwards, partnering with them to help them get the best value out of that. Oftentimes that's thinking about content. So thinking about how they're producing, if there is on-screen content or if there's branding and visualizations or a specific promotion that takes place at the event, what is the digital extension of that going to look like? And how can we partner with your teams internally on the digital marketing side in order to continue that engagement? And then when it comes to, healthcare, I mean, a lot of it happens in the doctor's office. So, I think that's another physical extension or at the pharmacy, like you said. So how is that activation going to have legs and be integrated into what you're doing in those places as well is something we think about a lot when we're designing.
I love that the multiple hits. For those of us in marketing, I'm always appreciative when I see those. I switched out a prescription of mine recently to something that's a little bit more obscure and hard to get and expensive. And my doctor's like, well, I don't know if insurance will cover it, but if it doesn't, we can GoodRx it. I'm like, all right, and I recognize that approach because of course we're in this industry. So I'm like, I know what GoodRx is doing. Good job, guys.
So hopefully that doctor, received some materials from someone that attended one of the activations at HIMSS and they saw GoodRx there live.
Exactly. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
So I want to get back to some of the messaging here. And there's a difference between simplifying science and making it accessible. What have you learned from all of these activations about communicating highly technical information in a way that invites people in without losing the integrity of the science?
It really depends on the format. If we're speaking kind of in the traditional exhibits space, even in brand activations, I think we're really leaning in on having to have all of the data, all of the details on the drug, on the device, on the therapy, in there and accessible, right? So oftentimes that information might live on a screen or in, some sort of a follow-up campaign even, or something, a digital asset that people who visit the space or activation might receive. But the experience in that space is much more about the human-to-human connection and the storytelling. So one other example, we work a lot with Medtronic and they do devices. And, we are constantly varying what that looks like in the space. So you start and you see the device first and you meet with an expert and you get to kind of understand how it works. And then if you need to dive deeper into the medical details, there's an area of the exhibit where you can go and do that. So starting with the piece that's more interesting, that is telling the outcome, leading with the outcome for the patient first, having that be the experience that the healthcare provider has in the space, but then again, making sure that there is the place for them to go to get the detail they need on the science. And some like to do that. They do want to explore and go deeper. So I think that's a very common technique that we use when we're working with our clients for sure, to lead with that storytelling. We also did something for Medtronic where we did a standalone activation where we did coffee stands out kind of on the street corner. So it really wasn't about their technology at all at first. It was about getting a cup of coffee, coming in and learning a little bit more. So using some of those techniques that are hospitality, that are just more about being a human and how you connect and how you feel invited into a space. And then having the science, again, be available, but not what we're leading with necessarily.
Really using the human nature to be curious to your advantage and using that as a tactic. I love that. It's really smart.
Yeah.
So as you look ahead, How do you see healthcare brands continuing to evolve the way they tell their stories? And what do you think will separate organizations that truly connect with people from the ones that simply share information?
I think the brands that we see that are really having great success and really getting the maximum value out of in person are very much investing in what we've described. So it's a lot of work to figure out how to bring your product, your therapy to life in an experiential way. But the brands that we're working with, either, like I mentioned, Beatrice with the clock, take some risks. Like that's not where you might want to start, right? You're not thinking like, oh, science, let's start with the 8-minute clock. But that clock was really memorable and it really drew people into the booth, so into their exhibit. So I think being willing to take risks, being willing to lead and understand that the storytelling piece isn't always on a screen, that sometimes we need to go back to things that are more not theatrical, but 3D, right? So we do a lot of 3D builds of perhaps it's a blood vessel showing what happens when a drug interacts, in the blood vessel, and you can walk into it as a tunnel. I think that is what experiential has that digital does not. So the brands that lean into that, and it does mean taking risks. It means sometimes you have to maybe not do a few things in that space that you want to, or maybe you've got to lean in on more of the patient outcome than sort of the detailed science and the complexity. So the brands that are getting there and simplifying and willing to take some risks to really appeal more to the human side of the healthcare provider and lean into that, the interest and curiosity, I think are the ones that are going to have more success with experiential as a platform.
I agree. As a long time event planner and attendee, if I have to go to one more wine tasting and lecture about the Willamette Valley wine growth, I'm gonna just retire. I can't do it anymore. Like, be creative, do something, take some risks. And I love that you are advising your clients to do that. Nobody wants to network with a cocktail hour anymore. We want way more information. We want an experience. We want to remember it. And I love that you're pushing that and pushing the boundaries. This has been fantastic, Erica. If people want to find more about you or Sparks, where should they go?
They can find us at wearesparks.com. And if they want to reach out to me personally, LinkedIn's a great place. You can find me at just Erica Spoor on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.